Okay, I believe we are live.
All right.
Let's see. Let me get a confirmation from Olivia that we are streaming. Okay, she says yes. So I think everyone, we're live. Awesome.
Cool. And I see some comments. Awesome. Excited to be here. Let's give folks a few minutes to join. We can kind of casually chat, but I'm excited to do this. Jess, how's your day going?
It's good. What time is it over there for you? Like 12?
It's 10. So I'm in New Mexico right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
My day is just starting, but I'm super excited for this. And yeah, a lot of people engaged on LinkedIn yesterday.
Yeah, that was cool to see. I think there's
You becoming a full-fledged LinkedIn influencer?
that's my goal. It's always been an aspiration of mine.
Or magic?
Is there any way for me to see how many people are in here? Are you able to see that, Jess?
It's a good question. Let me go on the live stream. Let me go on like the actual live stream. Let's see.
Cool.
33 people. 33 people, yeah. Olivia.
Okay. Let's go. Let's wait 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we will go and get this started. I can open up the live stream and have it muted on the side. Can someone post the live stream link in or Slack to me or something, Jess?
I got it. I'll post it in the YouTube live.
Thank you very much. So let me do this. I hope I don't cause any kind of weird echo or anything.
Should be fine.
There we go. Okay. I do have it open. I see myself.
All right. Should we get started?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Zach. I'm the founder and CEO at Warp. I'm here with Jess, who's our developer advocate. Psyched to be here. We've never done this before. Want to just give everyone sort of fair warning. The idea here that I thought would be cool would be to show off a bit of how I approach coding with LLMs these days. Really, really like broad, big picture. You know, I've been coding for a really long time. I don't want to go into how long. In the past year, the way that I approach coding has meaningfully changed. It used to be that if I was going to do a coding task, I would sort of open up my IDE, open up my terminal, find all the files I wanted to change and start typing. These days, more and more the way that I approach coding is by sort of opening up one of these LLM-based coding tools, whether it's Warp or Cursor, Windsurf. I've tried all of them. And basically telling the computer what it is I want to do. And so I thought it'd be fun to sort of work through a problem in public here, showing how I use these tools and maybe people get something out of it. The particular task that I want to do is to try to build an MCP server. So MCP, in case folks don't know, is Model Context Protocol. This is like an open protocol that Anthropic has put out. And the idea is you can, as a developer, write an MCP server, and that is a way of providing extra context to LLM-based apps. MCP seems to be catching on. Common use cases for MCP would be something like you want file system access, or you want, in the course of using an LLM, to be able to get access to like your Jira issues or your Slack conversations or something like that. And so it's an extensible protocol where a developer writes a server, and that server is able to sort of integrate with an LLM-based app and provide answers. So that's the task I'm going to try to do today. I will say right now, like Warp itself doesn't support integrating MCP servers, but we're gonna support this. but this isn't really about Warp. This is more about like using these LLM coding tools and trying to build something cool. And I will use Warp a bunch. Jess, anything I missed here before I get started?
Nothing much. I'll be monitoring the chat, so ask questions there.
Okay.
Also give feedback or ideas as Zach codes. Hopefully you walk away with a better understanding of how to code by prompt and also potentially with Warp. So exciting.
Cool. Yeah, Jess, please do monitor the comments. I'm down to make this as interactive as possible because there's going to be a bunch of time as I'm doing this where it's literally just the LLM doing things, and it's going to kind of be, it's going to kind of be boring. I see a question about vibe coding. I'm going to try to not do this. So there's got to be a vibe coding aspect here because I'm not an expert in what I'm doing, but it's not exactly the philosophy I'm going for. I would like to try to understand everything I'm doing here and make sure I'm doing it in the right way. So I'm going to share my screen and get started here. All right. Oops, wrong thing. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me close some of these other apps, by the way, so I don't do that again. All right, so for folks who don't know, actually, maybe I just give a second orientation on Warp, because Warp is going to be one of the tools that I'm using today. Warp is it's an intelligent terminal, so you can use it as a regular terminal, but it also is increasingly it's just a platform for telling your computer what to do. As a developer, we call it a sort of agentic command line. So you can sort of run commands in it, and they work like normal commands, but I could also just like speak to it in English and ask it things. So I could be like, you know, let's see, what's a good thing? I'll go into a directory here and I'll be like, how many lines of code are in this directory? And the point is I can enter commands here or I can enter English. And if I enter English, it goes into it'll sort of just do the task I want it to do. This is like a crazy command that I would not know how to write. And so just having this interface of being able to just type English and tell your computer what to do is like a pretty big advantage. So for this particular task, though, I want to start, with a little bit of an MCP overview. So MCP, just so what people understand what it is, when it's a server, and it can be a server that runs anywhere. It could be a server that runs locally. That's what we're going to do this time. It could be a server that runs in a hosted situation. The server has sort of three types of, let's try and find a good shows here. There's sort of three types of things that it will return to you. So one is it will return a resource. So resources are basically...
Do you mind expanding your screen? So Command plus, just to make it more easy. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, but I'm just literally pulling up the Model Context Protocol docs here. So it can return resources, which is sort of like, think of it as like GET requests or static content. You can expose a prompt, which is like a template for interacting with an LLM. I haven't found this to be super useful yet. The one that's most useful in my mind is exposing a new tool. And so a tool is something you can sort of like register with one of these LLM-based apps, and the LLM-based app will be able to call it, and that tool can basically take parameters and return data. I am going to start here. I'm going to do this in TypeScript. And by the way, I don't really use TypeScript, so this is going to be interesting. There is an SDK for building a Model Context Protocol server. It's an open source project. So the way that I would start using an LLM to get going on MCP right now is I'm going to clone this example repo, this SDK, and have my tool understand it. So I'm going to go ahead and say clone this into a new, I'm going to make this bigger actually, a new directory called Zach MCP TypeScript. And let's just start by doing this. And Jess, is everyone able to see this okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we'll do this. Let's go into it. Okay, the next thing I typically do in a situation like this where I'm building something that's unfamiliar is I'm going to try to have the LLM understand the code. So I think this is actually a cool thing that you could do when coding with LLMs. One of the key things that's going to determine the success is like how much context does it have. So I'm literally going to be like, actually, let's see what's in this directory, and be like, read the README and understand the structure of this repo, and explain it to me. Why not? Curious as I do this, if anyone else has tried to use LLMs like this, where it's like you have it, if you're doing something new, you have it first understand. And this gets everything into context here. And
There's a question. Is there a verbose mode for commands things run when asking in natural language? Is there a verbose mode for commands or things run when asking the natural language?
What's verbose mode mean?
I assume that they're asking, if you use Gemini /2, that shows the thinking, which is pretty cool.
I'll show you. So we have something where it will create a plan. And I'm going to show you that in a second, where it will show you a little bit more of what we plan to do before it does it. Here, I'm just sort of trying to have it kind of understand what's going on. So it's read this README. It also has sort of explained to me, I think it's worth reading it and understanding if it's right. So this is a TypeScript SDK to implement model context protocol. It lets you build MCP servers and clients. If you are making an MCP server, there's 3 types of functionality. So like I was saying, resources, tools, and prompts. By the way, the way I'm going to do this is first I'm going to build a super duper simple MCP server that just sort of echoes content. And then I'm going to try to build an MCP server that can read from your GitHub issues. But I'm going to do this one step at a time. There's 2 different transports. So this is interesting. So we're going to start by doing the std.io transport here. And basically, I think that the LLM, or in this case, agent mode in Warp, now has somewhat of an understanding of what's going on in this repo. So what I'm going to ask it to do now is let's create like the simplest possible MCP server that we can. And I know that if I cat this README, actually, let's look at this more as this. And I'm looking at this as a README. I know that there is a sort of quick start in here because I sort of played with this earlier. And I want to build a super duper simple tool here. Let's build this like, what's a good one? We'll do this calculate BMI and maybe this fetch weather tool. Just these tools, because I think tools is the most interesting thing. So I'm going to ask now the LLM to basically follow the examples in readme.md and build me a new MCP server that we'll just start with the implements, the BMI example. Do this in a new directory called Zach demo. Follow all the best practices for using the TypeScript MCP SDK defined in this repo. Okay. So here, maybe this is a little bit more of what the question was getting at. Because this is a somewhat complex task, the agent in this case, again, we're in Warp, but this type of functionality also exists in other LLM-based apps like Klein. I get an option here to create a plan first. And so creating the plan is interesting because it's going to use a different kind of model. It's going to use a reasoning model, in this case, O1. And it's going to kind of give me detailed steps of what it is that the LLM thinks it wants to do before it does it. And so we're going to try to get to a plan here. And I think this is interesting if you're doing something that's somewhat complex. Okay, so this is a context gathering step before it comes up with the plan. Jess, everyone seeing this okay? Any action? And I can't see the live stream at all.
Yeah, no, I think people can see this great. I think it was interesting. Somebody mentioned, Daniel mentioned he uses Warp a lot with Windsurf, which is cool.
Yep.
So it says they do the project planning in Windsurf to write a PRD and user flows. I believe Warps do everything else, which is pretty cool. I think it's like interesting to think about people using Warp with other AI dev tools.
Totally. I think a good combination right now is like Warp plus Cursor or Warp plus Windsurf. I mean, I'm kind of biased towards Warp in the sense that I am, I'm working on Warp. So I'm going to do this in Warp until I can't do it in Warp. And there probably will be a moment where it's not working perfectly well in Warp, but we're going to see. So it is, I don't know why it's not using our coding tool here to do this. And it didn't actually come up with a plan. I'm going to stop this. This is what happens a bunch of times. We're going to try this again. So I'm in here, and it started to make this file for me. And if anyone from Warp is watching, maybe you can kind of figure out why it didn't do this using our coding tools. I'm going to go back. I'm actually just going to straight up start this again. And I'm going to go back to my prompt from before. See if I can make my prompt better. I'm not going to do this in this new directory. I'm going to just do it here.
Do you want to relink the GitHub MCP repo just for extra context again in case it forgot? Oh, you're in the MCP.
I think it still knows. Let's see. Try this again.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we asked how well people think they understand MCP in the chat.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, have admitted they don't have a good understanding, which is good. I think this is like a great live stream to join, kind of learn about it together.
We're going to be learning together. Let me put it this way. So we're trying again to set this up. I don't know why this didn't actually go into building the plan, which is what I wanted.
We have an interesting question here.
Totally again. Yeah.
So Sam Gardner says, less technical person here. It sounds like Warp isn't directly integrated with IDE. That's correct. Do devs find this switching back and forth annoying? So I can kind of take it while Zach codes a little bit, but I think like one interesting thing that I've heard is like the command line or terminal is now kind of becoming the best place to interact with agents. So like as an agent is starting to take over more of your like coding flow and stuff, it doesn't really make sense to have 2/3 of your window being taken up by a file editor. So you can kind of see that with Warp and with maybe how Claude Code is doing things as well. So it definitely depends on preference, but I do think there are a lot of people who have started to say, hey, we kind of like this command line or single pane experience with kind of like being able to just talk with an LLM. So hopefully that answers your question, Sam. And feel free to chime in if there's other opinions. I think this is definitely a subjective thing.
All right, we finally got a plan here, which is what I was hoping to show earlier. And so let's see how this plan looks and whether or not I need to refine it. So the plan says it's going to create a new server.TypeScript file. That seems reasonable to me. it's going to import the necessary modules. It's going to implement the tool. It's following the pattern from the example. My tool on the server. All right, so I'm going to let this go. And so this is like basically now that I have the plan, I'm going to let this run for a few minutes. And I guess while this is running, I can like expand a little bit on what Jess was saying. I think IDE is a natural place to start for doing a coding project. Makes complete sense. Some people prefer to work in the terminal, also makes sense. I think that there's basically a new tool set that is emerging or going to emerge for doing this type of prompt-driven development, where if you're doing it in the IDE, what you're doing is you're basically using a chat panel to do it, and the chat panel actually kind of is like not too dissimilar from actually just using like something that's a straight up command line to do it. If you're doing it from something like Warp, you'll notice that we actually have sort of code diffs in here. And so you can, you can basically see the code as it's created. You can edit the code as it's created. And so I think that IDE, command line, et cetera, are kind of gonna converge into some app that is, that has like the most natural UX for prompting your computer to do either coding tasks, or what's cool about the terminal is that it's also very good for things that are not coding. It's good for deployment and production and project setup. And so, I obviously I'm biased towards Warp, but like I feel like these tools are all going to kind of converge into something that gives you an interface that is a little bit like this. You can see it with Claude Code. I don't know if show of hands people have been using Claude Code in here or not, but Claude Code also has this kind of interface. So yeah, let's see what's going on here. I think that's a good idea if you are doing this LLM-based development to actually understand what it's doing. So in this case, I asked it to build this BMI calculator tool. So just to remind everyone, like, what's the goal here? The goal is to create an MCP server. This is a super duper simple one, and then I'm going to make it more complicated. This is something that just takes, I think, 2 parameters, which is like your height and your weight, and it gives you back your BMI. And my goal is to get this to integrate with the Claude desktop app as an MCP server. And then I'll expand this to do something more interesting. But first, I just want to get the scaffolding of it set up. And so I asked Warp to do this, and Warp is now generating code for me. Let's look at what it's doing. So it is importing this stuff, creating an MCP server. So this is using the TypeScript API that Anthropic has published. It's defining a tool, which is what we want to do at the calculate BMI path. It takes these 2 parameters, weight and height, calculates the BMI, formats it. Oh, and actually gives you a category. Okay, sure. And then returns your BMI plus the category, and if there's an error. So it's super duper simple, and then it starts this as a server. And this server is something that I will try now, if it actually runs, to get the Claude app to connect to it. So let's keep going down here and see how this is going. So let's see how it's going. And we are doing an npm install. And it seems like we've actually gotten to a point where the server is running, which is pretty cool, I must say, all from that one prompt. Let's open this up in Cursor for a second and just look at it. So I think that that's interesting to see this through the IDE view as well. So let me see if I can get to this. This was in projects, Zach MCP TypeScript, under source, examples, server, and this looks pretty reasonable to me. If there are questions on this, please do put them into the chat. Now, I haven't done anything cool with this server yet, just so folks know. Yeah, go ahead.
I think what might be helpful is because people might not be familiar with the concept of MCP. Could
Yeah.
you
Let me
maybe just
show-
actually explain like
Yeah. Let me show the concept of MCP. So this is Claude. And again, MCP can be used by a number of different apps. It can be used by Claude. It can be used by Windsurf or Cursor. There's a whole bunch of apps that use MCP. And the idea behind MCP is that if I wanted to ask something from Claude here that wasn't about, that wasn't in its model per se, and maybe it was behind a firewall, maybe it was like information that was just on my desktop, Claude would have no way of getting that context to answer my question. And so what you can do with Claude, and I'll go in here and show this, is as a developer, you can define these MCP servers, and I have 2 of them installed and running. This Echo one I built earlier, this file system one here. And for instance, the file system one, this one, I guess this one's broken, but the file system one lets you ask questions about your own file system, and Claude will try and answer them. So I would be like, tell me how many files are in my downloads folder. And if this works properly, it will try to invoke this MCP tool. And so you'll see this right now. So this is a file system MCP tool. It's going to, it tells you what it's going to do. I'm going to allow it for this chat. This is kind of a cumbersome UX in my opinion. I don't know. It seems like maybe this tool didn't work. This isn't even a tool that I wrote. This is one that ships with Claude. But hopefully people get the idea. It should be able to use MCP to answer this question. Now, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try to add this BMI server that I just wrote as yet another external tool. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to pause the server for a second. And I'm going to say, okay, I know, because I was doing this earlier, that in order to add a MCP server to Claude, it's a little bit cumbersome. You actually have to edit a JSON file. So just to show this file for a second. You can see here that the file, it's kind of a hard font color, the file defines these servers, right? So MCP servers, there's an Echo server and a file system server. There's a command to run the server and args to pass in. And so in order to add a new server here, like the BMI one that I just wrote, we need to add another MCP server. In keeping with the theme of this, this like session, I'm not going to add this by hand. I'm going to add it. I'm going to ask agent mode to add it for me. So I'm going to put out a Vmax here, and I'm going to say, could you add a, actually I'm going to use voice. So this is a thing you can do in Warp. I'm just going to speak. Could you add a configuration for the new BMI server to this file? I'm going to paste the file. Oops, shouldn't do that. I'm going to say, please read the file first to understand its format. Yeah, go ahead.
While I'm doing this, while you're doing this, do you mind if I ask a conceptual question about MCP?
Yes, sure.
So right now you're trying to create a server to query for like BMI information, MCP server.
Yep.
So if I were to try to do this regularly without MCP server, it would be about the same, in my opinion. Is the reason why MCP is useful is if I try to scale an LLM to hit multiple different APIs. Is that where it becomes like where MCP starts to really show its use, is when you ask an LLM to do something and you don't know exactly what APIs or endpoints or tools it needs to integrate with. And so if every service has an MCP server, then LLMs can just be able to hit multiple of them and scale up quickly. Is that kind of the concept?
It's partly that. Just think of it as a way of providing extra context to the LLM. And so the BMI example is like a toy example, because I'm just trying to get this up and running. But like a good example would be like accessing your team's private Slack. So Claude has no way of doing that. But if you wanted to ask Claude something about like who sends the most Slack messages on my team, if you had a Slack MCP server, Claude could know that there's a Slack MCP server and call that server and get that information in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's more about like providing extra context, and that context could be the reasons you might want to provide it might be like because it's private context, or it might be because you want like fresher context or some custom program that does something. So it's super duper flexible what you use it for. But that's the general pattern, is like, just think of it as like you're adding a way of the LM getting more context. So, okay, so this is adding this BMI tool here. So I'm going to add this. We're going to see if this worked. I'm going to quit Claude. I'm going to restart Claude. And so the reason you have to restart Claude is now Claude is essentially starting this server for you. And it seems like it failed. So let's see. So this, but you can see it like looked at it. It tried to start this server for me. It didn't succeed. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to try to have the LLM debug what went wrong here. So this is another common thing I'll do with LLMs. I'll say there was an error starting the MCP server. Could you please read the log file and help me debug it? The log file is... And in the meantime, I can take a look at this file too. I'm curious. Actually looks like search error, rimraf missing path. So maybe some dependency error. So let's see. Let's see what it finds. So this is not saying there was a big error. Oh, it's receiving requests for methods it doesn't support. So interesting. So do I need to support these other MCP methods in order for the server to start? No, it says they're optional. So I don't know. And this is where you're going to see me. It certainly seems to me like this thing is actually running. So it's going to try to, instead of using npx, I don't think this should actually be required, but we can certainly try it. So it's changing which program is being run. Just so people get what's going on here, when you start Claude, Claude is executing a command to run the MCP server. So it manages the server lifecycle for you. Let's see if this actually, I don't think this is going to do it, but I would be surprised. Maybe. It did. So the BMI server is running. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So we're making some progress here. So we're gonna test it now. Can you calculate my BMI? My height is, we'll call it, actually, what units were the BMI server in? What units did the BMI server expect? again, how cool is this that you can just ask and it will figure. Oh, why it has it up here: meters and kilograms. I don't know what I am. Like, let's say 2 meters, and I don't know how many kilograms I weigh. Let's say 80 kilograms. And so, if this is properly working, it will invoke the tool. And so this is properly working, which is super cool to see. So I'm going to say allow for this chat. And it worked. So
this is so cool.
So this is like the toy example. So now this is how I develop. So now that I have like the toy example working end to end, let's add a more interesting server endpoint. By the way, any questions so far? So just to recap what I've shown, I've made a new MCP server with a tool. It's a really simple tool. You can see it here in cursor. This tool basically just takes height, weight. It calculates your BMI. It tells you if you are what range you're in, and it looks like I'm in the normal weight range. I don't even know if those are my actual numbers. All right, so now let's use this for something that actually might be way more interesting and a more real application of building an MCP server. So I'm going to try to build an MCP server endpoint that takes a GitHub repo and allows you to ask questions about the issues that are in it. By the way, this thing that I have here on the left, in case people are wondering, like, what is this thing? So this is a thing that we have in Warp called a saved prompt, which it's exactly what it sounds like. It lets you just save and rerun prompts and also share them. You can share them with your team or whatever. I was just working on this earlier, so I have this up so I have information around. But now let's try, I'm going to close this. Actually, no, this has good information in it. So actually, I'll just write this from scratch. So what I'm going to do next is let's extend this. And I'm going to talk because I think this is going to be easier if I talk. And I'm going to try to make this a cooler MCP server. So I'd like to add a new tool to my existing MCP server that does the following. Takes a GitHub repo as an argument. Optionally takes a GitHub issue as an argument. 3, returns metadata about the repo. We'll say e.g. like stars, forks, PRs, etc. For returns data about the issue, title, reactions, comments, and is useful in the context of an MCP endpoint. Jess, anything else you think would be cool here? So I think this is good. So the idea would be if I'm talking to Claude, I can start asking about issues in my own repo. I'll say if no repo, I'll make this optional. I don't need to have this selected. If no repo is provided, I'm going to have it use the warp GitHub issues. I'll have it use our own repo. As the issues repo. All right, so, and actually, yeah, probably a good thing to do here as first commit open changes before embarking. And I also have let's do this. So it should, I hope here, prompt me to make a plan for this because this is somewhat complicated.
And just checking, it uses O3 Mini, right, as the model to come up with the plan.
It uses O1, although it's configurable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
or actually, I'm on our dev build. I forget if in production it may be using a different reasoning model in production, but it shows you what one it's about to use.
Cool. So 3.7 Sonnet for the actual coding tasks and a different model for the planning.
Correct. So the idea there is that there are these like reasoning models, which are really good at coming up with plans. By the way, it's committing everything that I did here before it starts on this, which is nice of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the chat, somebody asked if there's a way to revert back to old code in case AI makes a mistake, which I believe we've talked about, right, with engineering and product design.
Yeah. So the short answer is right now the best thing to do is to have it use Git, but we would. It's on our roadmap as these things become more and more autonomous, to build in the ability to checkpoint or have it automatically use Git or something like that, so that it can do this in a more sandboxed way. So it is thinking about this, and it's actually, again, if anyone from Warp is watching, I don't know why it didn't generate a plan here, but this is all work in progress. Because I think it just made me a whole new server, which is cool. And let's take a look at what it's doing.
Yeah, it's it's funny.
What's going on?
Somebody's ask it why it didn't generate a plan. I would have liked it to generate a plan because we did have comments earlier asking if you can refine a plan. So yes. I would like to have you show refining it in Warp, because somebody asked like, can you change the plan as it's going? So it'd be cool to show that feature, but I guess we don't really have the opportunity to do it.
It's just building it. So again, this is like, we're in the kind of Wild West here of like prompt-driven development. And perhaps if I had done this in Cursor or Windsurf, it would have been a little bit nicer. But I actually think it's really going for it. Not only did it build the whole server for me, it's now actually just going to add the configuration. So let's take a look. I think always a good idea, take a look at what it's doing. Maybe it's easier to look at this in Cursor for a second. So where did it put this? Okay. So it does seem like we're probably going to have some issues running this because it seems like we're missing something here. Let's go down to the bottom and look at the server first and go backwards. So there's a server.
Can you expand this a little bit? I'm finding it hard to see.
Better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. So this is the server. What is it doing? So the server runs, and the server, let's go find its endpoint here, defines a tool. So it seems like this is what I want, GitHub info. It takes a repo and it takes an optional issue number, which is pretty cool. It's what I asked it to do. It defaults to the Warp repo, which is what I wanted. Parses it, and then it's using this OctoKit library, which I'm guessing is some sort of like library for fetching stuff from Git, which is cool, but it looks like it's not properly imported. And then it parses the response. If there's an issue, it looks like it's able to fetch that, the content, parses it. And so what's going to happen is like, this is going to go back, if this works properly, and I ask a question to Claude about my own GitHub issues, it's going to go back and it's going to call this server. The server is going to make the API call to GitHub, get the information, and then pass it back to Claude. That's the goal, at least. Let's see how we're doing over here. So it also just went ahead. Actually, it didn't do that yet. I don't know. It seems like it's trying to. Uh-oh. Warp team. It seems like it's in a little bit of a loop here. I know. It finally did it. So there it is. It added this. So let's run the server first outside of Claude. Please run it directly. So I'm testing this first without having Claude run it. And let's see if this works. No, and let's see why. So this is an error that I expected we would have here. So we need to install this. I mean, how cool is this that it just is like, oh, yeah, that's your error. You're missing this. Install it.
Yeah, it's somebody also asked earlier, like, how do you attach error? And so I guess you can't really show it because Warp agent mode autonomously like suggests commands to fix, but
cool.
Yeah, like attaching a error block as context is something that we can do in Warp as well.
Yeah, so you, just to show this, so if you wanted to, it looks like the server now runs at least. I don't know if it's doing the right thing, but we're going to try it in Claude in a second. If you wanted to, I'll just do this in a separate tab. If I were in agent mode, so you can always go, actually, you can always go command up and it will attach this based on the block and it will show you that it's attached it. So going back to this, it looks like it's running. So now let's try and run it in Claude. So in order to remember the thing I have to do here is quit Claude and restart Claude.
This is exciting.
And I'm waiting to see if there's an error. I don't see any error. Let's go in here to settings, developer. So I see I have a GitHub Issues server running, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to be, let's just try this. Tell me about my most recent GitHub issue filed. By the way, I have no idea if it's going to work. I did not get this far when I tried to practice this.
Is this pulling from Warp's issues GitHub?
It should be because there's I left out.
You didn't.
So it doesn't know. Let me see if I ask, can you use the GitHub MCP server? So if I try and tell it, no, confused still, Microsoft Cloud Platform. All right, let's try this again. What's the name of the server? GitHub Issues. How about this? Like, tell me about Warp's most recent GitHub. Actually, let me put in the whole repo for a second, see if that helps it trigger. So the problem here is like it's not. Tell me about the most recent issue, and is that it's not. It doesn't seem like it's triggering the tool call. Now it's working. Okay, so the logic for how one of these services uses MCP is kind of beyond the control of the MCP author. But now this got it to trigger. And so this is what I wanted to see. And so, okay,
This is awesome.
This is cool. It didn't get the most recent one. I don't know why it thinks this is the most recent one, but this definitely worked. So let me try this again. Tell me about, I wonder if there's a way to search for, so let me look at this code for a second. So we don't have like a way of searching right now. So I could try to add that. But let's just see. Let's just ask it about some random issues and see how it does. So let me look at one of our top issues for a second here. So we will sort by reaction. And let's do this. VS Code embedding, which people really want, I'll just be like, tell me about issue 257. See if this works. If it knows to continue going with, yeah, it does. It knows to keep going.
Nice.
So hopefully people are getting the idea. Like, another thing you could do to make this cooler would be to extend this code to have authentication. So right now, this is all publicly available information, so it's not that interesting. But if your GitHub issues were private, for instance, that would be cool. It's also cool because this is now like, it's summarizing the community interest, it's picking out user notable quotes. I could be like, when was the last comment on it? And so basically, I think we did it.
Yeah.
Let me stop here because I think we're at probably a good spot to stop. Let me come back to our live stream and stop sharing for a second, and just see if people have questions. Otherwise, I can kind of like summarize what we did again and then kind of wrap this up. But if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I can summarize some of the questions that we got throughout the call.
Yeah.
So somebody asked about speech recognition, which you demoed.
Yep.
You used voice to speak your prompt.
Yep.
It was awesome. Somebody asked about AI request limits. So I did clarify in the chat that everyone at Warp has unlimited AI requests, but there is for free plan for individual developers. There's what is the request limit right now? AI request limit? Is it 50?
I think it's 150 free requests, which should be enough to give you a taste of what it can do. And then there's obviously this stuff costs us money, so there's paid plans. But yeah, it should be enough to at least get it going.
There's also a question about how is active context managed in Warp? So I think people were interested about like how does Warp remember what's in your session and the state of things, which is
So generally the way to think about it is like if you're in the course of a interaction with agent mode, it as the AI does stuff, it is kind of grokking the output of what it does, and that all fills up the context window. And then when the context starts to get too long, we have to do smart things to try to basically compress what's happened so far, meaning like summarize it. I think if you use any of these AI tools, one of the big challenges is like, how do you keep the right context in the context window? And so we have some engineering that tries to make that better. You can also, by default, it will just continue your last conversation, but I could have at any point been like, oh, I want to start a new conversation. You could do that using Command Y, or you could clear the terminal, or you could open a new terminal session, and those all give you new conversations. We're trying actually right now to figure out how to make this sort of UX a little bit more intuitive. Yeah. I see. Is this built on VS Code? No. It's a totally native Rust app. So we really tried to build something that was super high performance and very native feeling, and so not a VS Code wrapper.
Yeah. One last mention before I'll let Zach wrap it up, but somebody did ask, as you were showing agent prompt, like, if there's a place where they can see a bunch of Warp agent prompts or prompts in general, stay tuned. We have something coming tomorrow. So if you found us through LinkedIn or Twitter, just keep an eye out. Tomorrow morning, we're doing launch. This is not Windows only. This is supported on all platforms, Mac and Linux. So that's awesome. Yeah, and Zach, I'll let you close it out. And if you have any more questions, I'll just be responding in the chat as well.
So again, thanks everyone who sat through an hour of watching me mess around trying to code. I was actually more successful than I had been in my prior times to this. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. My goals today were really to show you how I think the world of coding is changing. You'll notice I did not type a single line of code in doing this entire thing, which is, I still think is bonkers. And I did it entirely by telling my computer what to do. And so I wanted to give people some instincts around how I do that, how I get the LLM to understand the task, how I provided the right context, what to do when the LLM goes off the rails, how I debug when the LLM hits an error. And then the other piece of this was like I was trying to do something that's actually useful, which is for people working with LLMs, building MCP servers is pretty cool. So it's, if you want a way of providing extra context into Claude or Cursor or soon Warp, you can build one of these MCP servers. A great spot to start is with demo repo from Anthropic, and then it's pretty easy to just extend that to have it do arbitrary logic through adding tools. So I don't know, hopefully this was useful. I'd love to know if folks like this. If folks do like it, I will do this more regularly and just try and do interesting coding stuff. It's really fun for me to do.
How would you prefer we follow up for questions or connecting to those on the demo today? What's the best way to do this? Is this tweeting out to us, or should we maybe do like hello@warp.dev, like for feedback?
Well, we're gonna post this on YouTube, right?
Correct.
So we're gonna post this on YouTube. I guess, yeah, I don't know, Jess, whatever you think. If you want to set up an email, or if you want to do it on Twitter or whatever, we could do it there too.
We have an entire team monitoring all socials. So if you want to comment on the YouTube video, do that. If you want to post on Twitter, like comment on our post, or just tweet out like warp@warp.dev. We'll see it. We also have, I think it's feedback@warp.dev email, if you prefer that as well. We have somebody monitoring that. So however you prefer to do it, we will take your feedback and hopefully do this in the next live stream.
Yeah, I want to try and keep doing these if they're cool for people, and I'm still learning how to do them well. So yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. And thank you all for taking the time out of your days. Hope this was cool for you.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna end the live stream. See you guys.
Yeah.